Good morning. We will start at exactly 9:20. Good morning. May I request everyone to please settle down? Aljon. Aljon, yung door. Right. Okay. Okay. Good morning to our speakers and distinguished guests from the government, the diplomatic community, the private sector, the academe, and civil society. I am Joey Perfecto, the Secretary General of the Philippine Business for Environmental Stewardship, or PBEST, and I will be your host for today. Welcome to our forum entitled Transparent Governance for Climate Resilience, Exploring Challenges and Opportunities. This event is organized by the Philippine Business for Environmental Stewardship, and this is a hybrid event. So I would like to thank everyone who is here with us, even though given our rains outside, and for everyone who is joining us via Zoom and Facebook Live. As the Philippines continues to face significant challenges due to its vulnerability to natural disasters and climate change impacts, it is crucial that we explore effective strategies for climate resilience. Our nation's unique geography as an archipelagic country in the Pacific Ring of Fire underscores the urgent need for proactive disaster reduction measures and transparent governance. In his recent State of the Nation address, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. emphasized the critical importance of environmental protection and climate resilience, calling for intensified efforts across all sectors to address these pressing issues. Today's discussion will focus on identifying challenges and opportunities in the government's disaster risk reduction and mitigation efforts, and propose recommendations for enhancing our national climate resilience through collaborative and transparent approaches. To this end, we have brought experts from the government, civil society, the private sector, and the academe, reflecting the whole of society approach needed to address these complex challenges. So to officially start the forum today, we have recorded opening remarks from Professor Dean Manhit, the lead convener of PBEST. Unfortunately, Professor Manhit is not with us today as he is attending an important engagement in the US. Nevertheless, he sent us a recorded message. Let's all listen in.
Good morning, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you in this event with PBEST. I'm known as the Strat-based
Okay, one more time. Okay. Sorry, we are just having a little technical problems. Oh, there we go. Okay.
In this event,
Okay.
with PBES, I'm known as the Strat-Based Institute president, but over a decade ago, I worked with environmental scientists, worked with environmental lawyers, worked with the private sector to start the Philippine Business for Environmental Stewardship. The idea here is to bring people together. And this morning, I'd like to welcome everyone, especially our panelists, our guests, our participants, not only here in AIM, but also in joining us through the online process. We are to discuss this morning transparent governance for climate resilience, exploring challenges and opportunities. I've always argued that the Philippines is of strategic importance. I'm known to have commented regularly on geopolitics, especially in this critical region of the Indo-Pacific. As we stand as a maritime nation, strategically placed at the heart of the Indo-Pacific, our diverse connections with various countries shape the Philippine geopolitics. Focus, especially on upholding maritime security, cultivating supply chains, enhancing data connectivity, but most of all, as we advance into a green transition. In this day and age, climate change has become a major threat to our well-being, to our economic well-being, food and water security, and even overall health. Here in the Philippines, we constantly face the harmful impacts of climate change as we experience at the human, at the community level, rising sea levels, higher temperatures just last summer, and increased frequency of extreme weather events. And while our great nation stands proud in the heart of the Indo-Pacific, it is also located in the Pacific Ring of Fire that makes us highly vulnerable to natural disasters like typhoons, earthquakes, landslides, and volcanic eruptions. The 2023 data from the European Commission Joint Research Center shows the world's largest greenhouse gas emitters in 2020 is reflected in these slides. All five of these account for 63.4% of the global fossil fuel consumption and 61.6% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Noticeably, we are not one of them. So we suffer from these emissions. We are recipient of the negative effect of these emissions. And the Social Weather Station report that I like to quote, and the latest was December 2023, reflected an ever-growing awareness of climate change in our country, especially when 87% of us experience its negative impact. And when you look at the World Risk Index of 2023, there are lists, there are rankings that we would like to be number one. But in this ranking, we would not like to be number one because these harmful emissions, coupled with calamities we experience, reveal that the Philippines is a country most prone to disaster, according to this data of the World Risk Index. And the increasing frequency and intensity of these disasters only expose the nation's urgent need for proactive measures on risk reduction and transparent governance on green initiatives. Here, In PBES, or the Philippine Business for Environmental Stewardship, we believe that economic growth and environment responsibility can work in synergy for the progress and the development of the country. We strive to actively promote sound developmental policies and advocate right governance that will ensure environmental stewardship as a responsibility of all sectors. Here at PBES, as we uphold three pillars, we try to bring people together. Policymakers or those in government, private sector, civil society, communities. In the circular economy, we advocate for better solid waste management system, especially to the extended producer's responsibility law. In responsible mining, we advocate the use of green and critical minerals for the transition to cleaner, more renewable energy. In climate change and sustainability, we advocate the need to protect and conserve nature, soil, and sea by tracking threats such as greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity loss, and food scarcity, among others. Considering all this, the Philippine Business for Environmental Stewardship is aligned with objectives as identified by the priority sectors of the Department of Trade and Industry, and even the Board of Investment. We have always believed not only in PBES, but even in my other hat, Strat-Based Institute, of an investment-led, job-generating growth trajectory for the country. Especially with our aim in PBES, decarbonized grid, and even push for electrifying vehicles or transportation. And of course, as we try to push and protect nature. This goes to show how we use PBES as an effective, impactful driver and environmental arm, echoing not only the government's initiatives, but also bridging the gap between private and public services geared towards the green transition, the green movement in our country. These pillars that I'm sharing in these slides are advocacies we fully support in PBES. Me and my colleagues in PBES fully support our existing laws and policies on climate change and response and sustainability. In the past, we saw the Climate Change Act that urged interlocal government unit collaboration in conducting climate-related activities, as well as the Philippine Ecosystem and Natural Capital Accounting System Act that aims to enhance the natural resource management and boost climate and disaster resilience. Now, with President Marcos, the call to global action on climate change has been more and more amplified, especially with our recent success in our bid to take the lead in the Lost and Damaged Fund. With this, we can ensure that as President Marcos declared, the Philippines will be a formidable voice in promoting and advancing global climate action. We need to strengthen stakeholder advocacies in the area of climate change and sustainability. We invite everyone to join us today in discussing strategies for mainstreaming climate change adoption and even disaster risk prediction across different sectors and levels of governance. This does not only start today, and this will not end today, because what we want is we will continue to foster integrated strategies that would impact national policies and local implementation, and encourage more private sector innovation and community engagement for responsible environmental stewardship. Again, this is just start. The best would like us to convene today to take the lead and collectively move forward into a green future as we transition our lives, as we deal with the reality of environmental risk. Collectively, we believe in PBES and in my other hat, the strat-based group and institute, that we can do our best to address this and work together. Thank you and good morning again.
It provided an insightful overview of the climate challenges facing the Philippines and the urgent need for proactive measures on the risk reduction and transparent governance in environmental initiatives. Now we will delve deeper into these critical issues with our next speaker and our upcoming panel discussion. So our first speaker for today will talk about collaborative governance for local climate resilience, evaluating inter-LGU cooperation models in the Philippines. He is a senior fellow at the LaSalle Institute of Governance, professor of political science at development studies at the De La Salle University, Manila, and program convener and non-resident fellow at the Strat-based ADR Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. Francisco Magno.
Thank you very much, Joey, for that introduction. So my topic this morning is collaborative governance for local climate resilience, focusing on inter-LGU cooperation models that was presented also in the overview of Professor Dindo Manhit. So I would like to zero in on the Climate Change Act of 2009 and the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Act of 2010. And these policies emphasize the critical role of local government units in addressing the adverse impact of climate change and disaster risks in the Philippines. These laws mandate LGUs to develop local climate change adaptation plans, or LCCAP, and local disaster risk reduction and management plans, LDRRMP, as well as integrate them into their comprehensive land use plans, or what we call CLUP, comprehensive development plans, or CDP, and local development and investment programs, or LDIP. So this presentation would provide highlights from a study, and this study is actually uploaded in the Strat-based website, so you can get the entire the copy of that paper in the Strat-based site. The NDRM Act requires cities and municipalities to have local hazard mapping and vulnerability assessment systems. And there is a need to identify incentives and constraints that local governments face in developing DRRM and climate change adaptation policy. So you will notice that in this study, we really link these two together. But the broader framework is sustainable development. Linking DRRM and sustainable development tools into local policy requires additional work, resources, and attention. There is a need to understand what motivates LGUs to engage in local capacity building, technology transfer, and sustainable development. So there is a focus on capacity. Various studies have identified the lack of organizational capacity, support systems, and resources as critical barriers for LGUs in accomplishing their mission. In the same vein, there's LGUs in the context of developing training programs. What's the research framework here? I use the institutional collective action framework, which looks at LGUs in terms of how they engage in collective action. So looking at incentives and benefits. So why do governments choose to collaborate versus the decision not to collaborate? So I will provide you some highlights of of the granular study we did in a Philippine province. So collective action theory is critical in understanding how weak coordination affects how DRM functions in local areas. However, documented practices indicate the utilization of inter-LGU alliances as a mechanism to address collective environmental problems such as watershed protection and coastal resource management. So even as we discuss the RRM, uh, specific disasters, we have to locate it within a broader ecosystem framework. So we in this study we got empirical data from a previous report submitted to the Commission on Higher Education, and it actually used data generated in the province of Iloilo. It's also because the province of Iloilo agreed to have the study in the entire province, including all the local government units. So it's not just looking at specific LGUs, but the survey was undertaken throughout the province. So the sample is the universe itself. So selected interviews were conducted with sample LGUs. So the survey was conducted throughout the province, but we also conducted more granular qualitative case studies. So I will just present some of the highlights of this study. Uh, so this table provides us with the inter-LGU partnerships in Iloilo that Professor Dindumanit started to mention in his welcome remarks. We have to look at the various areas of partnerships that have been undertaken just in the province of Iloilo. So to understand better what's happening in the other provinces, we have to look at how the LGUs collaborate in various areas. If you notice, there are partnerships in various sectors, including economic partnerships, solid waste management, disaster rescue and emergency response, forest management, health service provision. You notice this is the highest area selected. They are allowed multiple responses. But you notice flood control, not so much. And coastal resource, considering that it's surrounded by bodies of water, um, and then river and watershed management. But the question, how do they do it? Inter-LGU partnership is not mandatory. It is voluntary as provided under the local government code. So how do LGUs forge their partnerships? It can be done through uh, informal policy partnerships, through a formal memorandum of agreement, memorandum of understanding, or a local ordinance. So local ordinance is better because it can be supported by budget allocation from the local government unit. But most of the time you notice a memorandum of agreement is pursued, and this operates within the election, within the 3 term or the 3 years of the term of local officials. But of course, if there's an ordinance, it provides continuity beyond the term of the elected officials. How do LGUs maintain partnerships? Uh, there are membership dues, there are alignment of plans, there is cost sharing, and commitment also of non-financial resources. So especially in times of disaster, uh, lower income LGUs may not have the rescue equipment, disaster response paraphernalia, so they might need the support of the other LGUs. But so therefore, it's very important to work together, uh, because natural hazards, they do not recognize political boundaries. Uh, Floodwaters cross territorial political boundaries. And we were discussing a while ago with friends and colleagues that that includes the heat wave that the country also experienced a few months ago. What are the motivations and incentives to collaborate? So these answers were provided by the LGUs themselves, no, in the province of Iloilo. Improving governance performance. So there is a recognition that uh, partnering with your neighboring LGUs would improve governance performance. You would be able to access external resources, and you learn and share practices and knowledge from other LGUs. So you learn from each other. But what are the obstacles that LGUs face in collaboration mechanisms? So usually, I mentioned that it may not be sustainable due to electoral cycles. That's why there were few ordinances, but not a lot of them, but because uh, it requires time and also technical support, studies. Lack of support from constituents. So it's very important to have political support because the voters in one LGU might be asking, why are you using our budget to support, let's say, a project in another LGU? But precisely that project would have collective effects on the broader ecosystem. So you need to get or to provide what I would call an ecosystem framework, both for the decision makers and the citizens. We have an Environmental Education Act, actually. We have a law. So I think that that can support the other side of the coin, which is the citizenship side. Civic capacity, and that includes environmental citizenship. So it's not just for decision makers, but also for citizens and voters. Because our politicians might be unwilling to act because they might think that, or they would think that the voters will not look kindly about investments in broader types of sustainable development programs. Now let's look at the relationship between the plans that I mentioned a while ago, the LCCAP, the Climate Change Adaptation Plan, local, and the Local Disaster Risk Reduction Management Act, because it should be connected with broader plans at the LGU level, considering that the Philippines doesn't have a national land use plan. So the best thing that we have is a comprehensive land use plan. And so this is where the data concerning hazards, about how land uses are being used, or land uses are developed. And we noted in this survey that those who updated their CLUP, because it's supposed to be updated every 5 to 6 years, only 4 had updated at the time of the survey, and 39 out of the total 43, 39 LGUs were still in the process of updating the CLUP. So you might want to try looking at other provinces, whether what stage are they in the process of really coming up with CLUPs that are really updated. So it has to go beyond the 3-year comprehensive development plan to provide us a window for long-term planning, from medium-term to long-term planning. Actually, the longer-term plan should be the SDG localization plan, Sustainable Development Goals. But it's still a challenge whether this is really mainstream in our planning process. But the CLUP is provides us with a planning window that goes beyond just the term of the sitting local chief executive. So, what are the capacity areas in local planning that needs improvement? So you notice data gathering. So it's really basic research. So data gathering, uh, the need to build the technical skills of personnel, problem identification and analysis, environmental scanning and stakeholder analysis, finance and resource generation, equipment and facilities, the use of GIS, and other types of planning skills, including partnerships with other LGUs. So while I'm discussing inter-LGU collaboration, their level of skills in collaboration is actually leaves much to be desired. So in fact, the LGUs want to build their capacity better in this area. So I think we need more studies and more data and information on models of collaboration, because LGUs themselves are seeing this as important in improving their capacity. And look at monitoring and evaluation of a previous plan. So you would notice that these are really planning skills as well as budgeting skills. I think it's the whole cycle, no, from problem identification to uh, problem or to policy implementation to monitoring and evaluation. So what are the sources of information that local planners find relevant in crafting local plans? So these are inputs from local community. Okay, I think we have to emphasize this because there's a tendency for plans to be a kind of a copy paste if you don't monitor how they're done, right, for compliance. So we have to go beyond compliance and look at the quality of the plan. So this is where maybe the other stakeholders in the in the local ecosystem can be very important, especially the think tanks, the policy think tanks, and the universities in the ecosystem. But at the same time, you need input from local community because of the diversity of the challenges in different local ecosystems. Because the challenges are different, the hazards. Because we are a very diverse country, uh, there are some LGUs that they have upland issues, they have coastal issues, but there are some LGUs that will just be their challenges may be related to only one of these areas of uh, or environmental challenges. So what are the other sources? Of course, this is precisely what we are talking about, compliance with policies, but uh, they're also looking at resources from civil society organizations and what they learn from training and seminars, websites of national government agencies. Okay, what is the relationship between the DRM plans and uh, with climate action plans? So this is a status of what they have with DRM plans, 35 without plans, 8 in DRRM, but with respect to climate change action plans, there is a greater challenge here, right? Because of LGUs not able to produce, no? There are more without climate change action plans versus those with climate change action plans. And with solid waste management plans, There are more with plans, but there are still a greater number without solid waste management plans. So what does it tell us? It tells us that there is really a technical capacity gap or technical capacity challenges. Because to have a solid waste management plan, you need the capacity to come up with a waste characterization, and perhaps you need people with skills in chemical analysis. So I'm not saying that LGU should, within their plantilla, would have these resources, but they can get from, let's say, the local universities or state universities. After all, they are also government. But maybe not just limited to government universities, but also private universities. I'm actually pushing for a consortium of academic organizations in the local area to help in LGUs. Okay, this is interesting. Is Solid Waste Management Plan integrated in CLUP? Yes, 22. No, 14. Okay. Solid waste management should be a key part of a comprehensive land use plan. Is DRRM integrated in CLUP? Yes, 19. No, 17. So it's 50-50. Is the climate change action plan integrated in CLUP? Yes, 7. No, 36. So you see the disconnect, right? In the we have these climate change action plans, we have DRM plans, and yet they are not integrated in the uh, comprehensive land use plan of the local government units. So what are the LGU policies and programs related to climate change adaptation? So we have environment-friendly agriculture, uh, climate change education and advocacy, disaster prevention and mitigation education, air quality control, recycling, water quality management, ecosystems production, and okay, there was reference to use of plastics. So it covers a lot of different environmental policies. What are the LGU policies related to solid waste management? So waste collection, transfer and processing, composting, and proper waste facilities. So this is possibly an area for collaboration, sanitary landfills, for example, which are costly and requires a lot of technical capacity. But education and advocacy, in the SONA of the president, he mentioned solid waste management as one of the key areas that need to be addressed in relation to flood control. With respect to the LGU policies related to the RRM, these are the areas stockpiling and equipping, evacuation centers, mobilizing volunteers, use of information and communications technology, contingency planning, and local weather forecasting. Okay, it's very important. Common hazards experienced by LGUs. So we have all sorts of hazards, and this includes floods. So it appears that floods are really on top of the list because it's not just natural, but it is linked to infrastructure. Especially floods are more challenging in urban areas where you have a higher level of density, population density. Landslides, fire, storm surge, drought, and earthquakes. What are the obstacles and capacity gaps faced by LGUs in DRM planning and implementation? So uh, this includes lack of technical knowledge and skills, lack of support from local businesses, universities, and CSOs. So the whole of society framework that was mentioned in the welcome remarks of Professor Manhit, we have to take note. And maybe this is precisely an area of interest to PIVES, the contribution of different knowledge institutions. Okay. Lack of support from NGOs and people's organizations. So I believe there are a lot of environmental advocate groups now in our forum. Lack of time to develop a plan. Okay, I think you have to allocate really time and not be limited to the three years in office of the elected officials. So I think that's the challenge, how to bring the electoral cycle in tune with the need for sustainable development planning. So it's similar with respect to obstacles in CCA planning. So I'll try to just present to you the remaining slides on what can we conclude from this presentation. So the local government units in our sample province identified the following as the most important capacity gaps in DRRM and climate change adaptation planning. Lack of technical knowledge and skills, lack of informational resources to develop plans, lack of support from national government agencies. I'm always advocating really the need to strengthen vertical policy integration. So local autonomy doesn't mean that LGUs really just do their own plans in isolation from the national policy landscape, but the type of policy integration has to be both vertical and horizontal. Vertical to capture the whole of government approach, and horizontal to bring in different community stakeholders. Absence of support from private sector, such including or from the private sector, as well as universities and NGOs. Lack of funds. I have another slide on lack of funds because the need for better cooperation and communication with other LGUs. The capacity needs that require enhancement are those related to planning, problem identification, data gathering, and use of various planning tools, including stakeholder mapping, vulnerability assessment, and transect mapping. So the entire gamut of research tools that are needed in planning and policy development. But well, it's not very, maybe not very visible from your vantage point, but let me emphasize that this is a table providing a summary of receipts, utilization, and balances of the DRRM fund or Disaster Risk Reduction Management Plan. This is the report of the Commission on Audit, the latest COA report on how DRM funds are being utilized. And it shows that there is a large balance. National government agencies, 11 billion pesos unutilized at the end of 2022. GOCCs, 6 billion pesos. And local government units, 47 billion pesos. I think that is really what the pronouncement of some policymakers or legislators are talking about. We have money, but then they are not absorbed and utilized. In fact, if you look, by the way, the report is uploaded in the site of the Commission on Audit, so you can check the the breakdown of this underutilization. So I even saw a national government agency with a very large budget, and the utilization rate is only below 1%. So it appears that while I am discussing the lack of technical capacity of LGUs, even national government agencies are not able to use their DRM fund. But yeah, precisely. Okay. Okay, there. Let me go now to knowledge partnerships. So as I mentioned, there is weak knowledge partnerships between LGUs and higher education institutions. With data collection regarded as the most important capacity area for improvement, there is a need to link knowledge producers and knowledge consumers in the RRM. So in a policy ecosystem, the two institutions with the most data are government and universities. So they should work together. In conclusion, this study provided a baseline assessment of a Philippine province in understanding local cooperative arrangements, particularly the costs and benefits of collaborative governance in local DRM and CCA planning and governance. It identified various areas for cooperation. The findings from the study can serve as inputs in designing incentive arrangements. Capacity building activities can be developed to guide LGUs in addressing complex local problems, such as climate change and disaster risk management. Future studies are needed to address, first, given the dependency of LGUs on national government agencies, what are the prospects of vertical collaboration in local DRRM and CCA governance? Second, how can vertical collaboration impact the incentives and costs of horizontal arrangements? Okay, so uh, of course there are proposals to centralize the process, no, to have a grand department of disaster resilience, but that may not answer the problem because after all, disasters, climate change impacts are local. What we can propose is just strengthen policy coordination, considering that our framework of climate change and the RRM is that it uh, it includes the different aspects of disaster resilience. So you cannot in fact say that a single department will therefore get all this expertise, and then what we may end up supporting is a larger bureaucracy, larger than what we need, which is more collective action in addressing climate change and disaster risk reduction. So we need more studies to address what are the peculiar local characteristics, community context, and local demographics that affect the decision to collaborate. Like it was noted, storm surge. So not all LGUs will uh, will have this challenge of storm surge, especially if they are in the upland areas. So we need to have more granular types of studies. And what is the role of income and the amount of the national allotment on the design of alliances and sustainability of LGU membership? So all these things are tied up together, planning and budgeting, and what's most important is monitoring and evaluation. I think these are the things that are on the top of minds of people right now, given that we have a lot of flood control projects. And then your question is, why are the floods still there? But the answer might be more granular than sweeping, because I was conversing with Orly a while ago, and there are areas where floods have been mitigated. But what we see are the more challenging ones, where you have a lot of people living along the coastal areas, living along the riverbanks. So this might require more comprehensive types of engagement, that in a way we can apply the vertical policy integration that's needed, especially, let's say, in building new settlements in line with climate change adaptation. Meaning that we might have to uh, to bring people to safer grounds, and not just doing it in a cyclical manner, but that requires a lot of political will. So thank you very much for your time this morning.
All right. Thank you so much to Dr. Magno for that presentation. Now, as mentioned by Dr. Magno, if you want to view his study, you can view it at the Strat-based ADR website. It is entitled Local Environmental Governance Baseline Assessment of Climate Change Adaptation and Disaster Management Practices in a Philippine Province. And now we move on to our panel discussion on integrating climate action and disaster resilience, forging collaboration across sectors and levels of governance, which will explore strategies for mainstreaming climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction across various sectors and levels of governance. This discussion will provide insights from diverse perspectives on overcoming siloed approaches and fostering integrated strategies spanning national policies, local implementation, private sector innovation, and community engagement. So to start the panel discussion, we will hear from the Honorable Annalisa Te, Undersecretary for Finance, Information Systems, and Climate Change at the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Now, unfortunately, Yusek Te is unable to join us today as she is out of town on official travel. She would have wanted to join us here today, so she has sent us a recorded message. Let's all listen in.
To our partners from the Philippine Business for Environmental Stewardship, PBEST, with lead convener Professor Dindo Manhit, and to our esteemed colleagues present today, isang makalikasang araw po sa inyong lahat. I am pleased to open this panel session where we will discuss strategies for mainstreaming climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction across different sectors and levels of governance. In 2023, the Philippines developed the National Adaptation Plan through rigorous climate science and extensive stakeholder consultations. Aligned with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC guidelines, the NAP customizes strategies to tackle local challenges and will steer targeted adaptation efforts across national, regional, and sectoral levels going forward. We are the third ASEAN country to submit a NAP to the UNFCCC. This comprehensive plan integrates rigorous climate analytics to identify vulnerabilities and adaptation needs across 8 key sectors, namely agriculture, fisheries and food security, water resources, energy, transport and communications, health, ecosystems and biodiversity, cultural heritage, population displacement and migration, land use and human settlements, and livelihoods and industries. The NAP prioritizes integrated adaptation actions, emphasizing holistic resilience building. It identifies critical enablers such as multilateral funding and private capital essential for successful implementation. The NAP has categorized over 80 provinces in the Philippines based on their exposure levels to key climatic impact drivers. On the screen, you can see the 18 provinces that have been identified as high exposure areas to climate risk. In terms of climate impact driver, sea level rise, Luzon is experiencing a significantly faster rate compared to the national average. In particular, the provinces of NCR, Bulacan, Zambales, and Batangas, all with coastal areas facing the South China Sea, are projected to experience high rates of sea level rise. Meanwhile, Bicol Region, Cagayan Valley, Eastern Visayas, and Eastern Philippines are projected to face more significant impacts from extreme sea levels. A separate 2015 study of the UP Marine Science Institute has also projected 30 provinces with the highest simulated storm surges, which puts vulnerable fisher communities at risk. We have also identified 24 climate vulnerable provinces where we push for climate investments in terms of prioritization under the government's risk resiliency program. To achieve its climate mitigation commitments, the Philippines formulated its Nationally Determined Contributions Implementation Plan, or NDCIP. The strategic roadmap outlines the specific policies and measures across key sectors: energy, transport, industry, agriculture, and waste, to achieve its ambitious target of reducing emissions by 75% by 2030. The plan delineates unconditional and conditional targets, which are contingent on international support, technology, and financing. The Philippines emits an average, in terms of the greenhouse gas emission trends, the Philippines emits an average of 1.98 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per capita in 2020, or considerably below the global average of 4 metric tons per capita, and contributes less than 1% of global emissions. The energy and transport sectors are the top sources of emissions, are responsible for 56% of emissions in 2020. Then we have the agriculture, 33%, with rice cultivation and livestock being the main sources. Then we have wastewater discharge and solid waste, responsible for 13%. And outside of energy-related emissions, other emissions from industry are around 7% of total emissions, mainly coming from cement and metal industries. It should be noted that the forestry and other land use sector is a net sink, which reduced the Philippines' overall emissions by 11% in 2020. The government is updating its NDC to increase climate ambition and economy-wide mitigation potential, ensuring science and evidence-based ambition and its supporting pathways with implications for adaptation co-benefits and a just transition. From the slide, you will note there that we intend to review based on the global stock-taking one to allow for increased national level NDC ambition, and then we will also assess our NDC progress, identifying the challenges and opportunities, including Article 6, land use, LULUCF inclusion, MRB, and develop an updated NDC, including a revised policies and measures for the NDC, and then we will conduct economy-wide analysis of the NDC 2 impacts, and then identifying the resources to ensure the delivery of the policies and measures. The DNR with the other national government agencies are working on the development of a long-term strategy for climate action in the country. This effort will link the decarbonization and resilience pathways to the broader development agenda, outline actions for long-term transformation, and establish a framework for future updates to the Philippines NDC and NAP. The long-term strategy will consist of establishing long-term pathways towards net zero and climate resilient economy, and enhancing technical and institutional capacity for long-term climate planning. To ensure gender-responsive policies and measures in the NDCIP, the NDC Gender Action Plan for 2024 to 2030 was developed with support from UNDP. It emphasizes gender mainstreaming in governance, adaptation and mitigation, measurement, reporting, and verification, or MRB, as well as finance, and the sector-specific gaps have been developed for transport, energy, agriculture, waste, and industrial processes. Climate change is projected to impact 7.6% of the country's total gross domestic product, amounting to $24.2 billion by 2030 and rising to 13.6% by 2040. Around 2.5 million Filipinos were displaced in 2023, primarily due to disasters, and it is projected that 16.9% of the Philippines islands will be submerged due to sea level rise by 2100, putting at risk 64 provinces, 822 coastal communities, and an estimated 13.6 million Filipinos that would need relocation. The Philippines will experience a high degree of water shortage by the year 2040. The country ranked 57th, likely most water-stressed country in 2040 out of 167 countries. Agriculture will bear the brunt of water shortage by that period. Rising temperatures, which are among the most significant by climatic threats, are expected to impact 19% of the Philippine coral reefs during the 2030s. So it's imperative that we strengthen efforts to address the losses and damages and the irreversible impacts of climate change. So the Philippines is advancing towards the priority actions of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. The updated National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Framework for 2020 to 2030 emphasizes a comprehensive all-hazards approach. Progress includes significant strides in risk identification and assessments through innovations like GeoRisk Philippines, which aids local government units in developing risk-informed DRR strategies. Expanded efforts also include hazard assessments, improve multi-hazard early warning systems, and impact-based forecasting. Implementing the Philippines NDC will require about $72 billion, with the largest needs in the energy sector, around $36.5 billion, and transport sector, $33 billion. The NDC financial strategy is being developed to support implementation of the NDC PAMs with a focus on sector-specific and cross-sector actions. So innovative and sustainable financing ensures efficient resource use, long-term stability, and alignment with climate and development goals. The Philippines has developed the Sustainable Finance Roadmap to set up our country's blueprint to mainstream climate finance and to align investments with green projects, address policy gaps, and promote sustainable financing initiatives. The government is also pursuing the potential of carbon markets in the Philippines. Several efforts with development partners on forest carbon roadmap, carbon pricing instruments, and enabling national policies for voluntary and carbon markets are ongoing. To institutionalize these initiatives, government mechanism and science-based tools for policy and program coherence and cohesiveness are being employed. To enhance ecosystem resilience and community adaptation, the Risk Resiliency Program as a convergence program is continuously being rolled out and scaled up. It enhances climate adaptation, mitigation, and disaster risk reduction through strategic planning, budget optimization, and improved investment quality. The program convergence budgeting is being utilized to encourage agency collaboration in planning, budgeting, and executing priority resilience projects. A key activity under the Risk Resiliency Program is developing the investment portfolio for risk resilience for climate vulnerable provinces. The IPRR identifies gaps and constraints to enhance resilience and manage climate and disaster risk. It serves as the primary tool for investment planning under the RRP, outlining actions to address climate and disaster vulnerabilities. To date, all the 24 climate vulnerable provinces and 4 major urban centers have already formulated the investment portfolio for risk resilience. Another tool is the climate change expenditure tagging system, introduced nationally in 2014 and locally in 2015. This tracks and reports budgets that are aligned with climate change pillars and National Climate Change Action Plan priorities. Aside from these programs and tools to support climate resilience, an environment-centric tool developed by USAID CBOL with the DNR that enhances post-disaster recovery planning is currently being mainstreamed within the DNR. The Green Assessment Framework is a multi-stage framework developed to assess biodiversity and ecosystems before and after disasters. It provides a sound basis for devising strategies and actions to repair damaged ecosystems and highlights the need to incorporate biodiversity and ecosystems in planning for post-disaster recovery. Green assessment in Palawan revealed that after Typhoon Odette in 2021, Palawan's land cover underwent a drastic overnight transformation with approximately 371,000 hectares damaged, and various intervention measures are now being undertaken based on this information that we got from the green assessment. It is important that the government organizes itself effectively to ensure cohesive coordination and effective partnership with private sector and civil society organizations. So the government is designing its interagency mechanism that will harmonize and synergize the various work streams on the NAP. So as you can see from the screen, we have identified these work streams on NAP, NDCIP, climate finance, carbon markets, loss and damage, just transition, transparency, and climate reports. No? And we're identifying the various agencies that should be taking the lead and supporting each other so that we will be more coherent in our implementation. In the pipeline are the formulation of the roadmap for just transition, making sure that people is at the heart of our climate action. So appropriate programs should be designed for workers and communities who will be affected by transition to clean energy, for example. Formulation of the Blue Economy Program is also being initiated now to maximize the potentials of our coastal and marine resources towards sustainable use, with natural capital accounting as a tool for economic valuation, including blue carbon ecosystem quantification and mapping. We have also completed the National Circular Economy Framework, program plan for sustainable production and manufacturing, sustainable communities, resilient agriculture, food and services sector, environment and natural resources. Economic vitality will be developed from this framework. The Philippines is steadfast in playing a proactive role in addressing regional challenges. It will be hosting the 2024 Asia-Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction, or APMCDRR, on October 14 to 18. President Marcos issued Administrative Order Number 92, creating an interagency committee led by the DNR and DND secretaries to prepare for a ministerial conference. The event will focus on cross-sectoral collaboration, innovative solutions, and disaster resilience in the Asia-Pacific. The President announced during the SONA address on July 22 the selection of the Philippines as host country of the Loss and Damage Fund Board, which is a historical achievement in the global discourse on addressing vulnerabilities and advancing global climate action. It stamps Philippines' commitment to serve as a voice and champion for vulnerable countries' needs for easy, direct, and equitable access to climate financing. Forging strong collaboration is crucial for advancing climate action and enhancing disaster resilience, and the Philippines remains committed to adopting a whole-of-nation approach. This collective effort underscores our dedication to safeguarding vulnerable communities, promoting sustainable development, and securing a resilient future for all Filipinos amidst escalating climate challenges. And central to this approach is transparent governance, which ensures accountability and effective implementation of initiatives to mitigate climate impacts and build resilience across the nation. Maraming salamat po to PBES for giving us the opportunity to present to you the various government initiatives, and we look forward to a collaborative discussion ahead.
Impacts of climate change are crucial. The initiative she has outlined, from categorizing climate vulnerable provinces to developing innovative financing strategies, demonstrate our country's commitment to climate action. So for our next panelist, I would like to call on stage Mr. Rene Butch Maley, the president of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give a warm welcome to Mr. Butch Maley.
Thank you. Uh, I don't see the clicker, but last week, as it was raining, I couldn't help but recall those days of Ondoy, which we actually lived through, and that's actually how PDRF started. In 2009, as many of you may recall, it rained continuously for 6 hours straight. We got more rain in 6 hours than we did in a year. I think that's what they were telling us. And the problem at the time was that the water came down from the Marikina watershed. It flooded all the areas along the Pasig. It flooded all the areas along Laguna Lake. Many of the streets that you walk out of when you leave this building were flooded. Many of the people in not just in other areas, but even in the villages around here, had to scramble and get onto ropes and try and save themselves from the water which was rising. People at the time left that, I think it was a Saturday morning, thinking that this was an ordinary storm on Doy, and it was not a big deal. But by the time they went home that evening, many of the roads and highways had turned into rivers, and many of them were stuck in their cars. A few of them died there. So that's how the president of the Philippines at the time, President Macapagal Arroyo, asked for a public-private sector partnership, and that's how PDRF was formed. The unique thing about PDRF is that it's made up of many of the competing companies in this country. Our three co-chairs are my boss, Manny Pangilinan, the PLDT Smart Metro Pacific Group, Jaime Augusto Isabel Ayala of the Ayala Group. We compete with each other in many areas, whether it's in telcos, water, power, and a number of other areas. And our co-chair is Cardinal Tagle, who, although he's busy in Rome, makes it a point to always call in for our board meetings. But that's the whole idea when it was formed. It was formed because of Ondoy. So seeing what was happening last week really reminded me of those days. It was not as bad as Ondoy. You may think it was, but the destruction of Ondoy lasted for a long time. I noted what the professor mentioned about a number of methods that we could undertake to solve these issues, but I should just mention that we tried all these things. Now we came up with, we spoke to the Dutch. We hired a Dutch firm called Deltares. The Japanese funded an extensive flood control program for Metro Manila. I think DPWH Secretary, a succeeding administration, Babe Singson, implemented many of these. We met continuously with the Finance Secretary, Gary Teves, at the time. The Cabinet Secretary, Batch Saludo, actually moved in with us at PLDT because that's how serious the situation was. This government borrowed a lot of money for these flood control projects, and Gina Lopez at the time moved heaven and earth to move the people out of those river embankments into a settlement far in an area that was safe and far away from the rivers. The problem is that people always move back. That's the problem. And some of the LGUs were resistant because many of these people are actually voters. So they had an interest in keeping the people there. But it's a metro-wide problem. It's not a problem that an individual LGU can resolve, as you mentioned. It's really that's why the MMDA was formed many years ago, but it was really a metro-wide solution that needs to be implemented. But anyway, that's how we were set up, and I couldn't help recalling what we went through 14 years ago. We operate all over the country. We operate in all the different pillars of disaster management. That's mitigation, preparedness, relief, and recovery. And when the disaster is particularly extensive, for example, Typhoon Haiyan or Yolanda in 2013, we have permanent teams in those areas. We had the same thing with Marawi in 2017. One of the first things we did after, because we've learned just from Ondoy but also from Yolanda, all these terrible storms and tragedies that we faced, is we decided the private sector needed to build its own. It's the first of its kind in the world, its own emergency operations center. We decided to put it in Clark because the nightmare scenario is a major earthquake hitting Metro Manila. We have not had a major earthquake hit a large Asian city for over 100 years. And the casualties, I think, would be quite significant. Lack of communication. It's already a densely crowded city. The roads will be clogged. So we have a separate team based in Clark, where they're near a major airport, they're near a major seaport, and they can continue to function even if the leadership is cut off. But that's the whole idea. We can track storms anywhere in the world. We can, if an earthquake above magnitude 5 happens anywhere in the world, a bell rings there. We're able to track it. We track the pandemic from there. And we do that also for volcanic eruptions. I hope you get the chance to visit because it's something we should be proud of. We operate on the cluster system because that's the strength of the private sector. Much of the Philippine economy is privatized. So whether it's water, energy, telcos, logistics, these are all private companies. So we need to work with the government. We try to use the core expertise of our companies in all these different phases: preparedness, response, and recovery. For those of you that are from NGOs, it's easier to work with private companies if you ask them, not just for cash, but for what they already make, whether it's water from Coca-Cola, whether it's generators from company, or whether it's rain catchment containers by a company that already makes them. It's easier to work with them and get things from them if they already have it in store. We try to be as interoperational as possible. Members of the UN Humanitarian Country Team, I see some of my colleagues here. And then we're also work closely with the government as well. For Department of Energy clusters, one of the best clusters, we have a common Viber group. So we know instantly, both the public and the private companies there, which areas of the country have no power and how long it's going to take to be restored. We work closely also with the Department of Social Welfare. We've got an MOU with them to move their relief goods using UPS trucks, as you'll see later on in this presentation. So we try to be the coordinating center among all these different points, whether it's the LGUs, the national government, the UN agencies, or groups overseas. We work on response, though the corporate foundations frankly take the lead here, as they did last week and continue to do so. We'll be mounting a relief effort, but it'll be only after the corporate foundations have already done their thing. What's unique about the relief effort of PDRF is that, if you'll notice, we use the equipment and the linemen of companies like Meralco and Aboitiz Power. They go to areas all around the country. They actually live there for months at a time until power is restored. And then we've got pre-agreements with companies like UPS to use their trucks to move relief goods for the government. We've got pre-agreements with Airbnb to provide residences for people that need it, and we were able to use that during the COVID pandemic for healthcare workers. Recovery is one of our strengths. We were originally called the Philippine Disaster Recovery Foundation after Ondoy, because that was the focus then. We work closely with sari-sari store vendors. We did that after Typhoon Yolanda and after the COVID-19 pandemic, because it's so important for companies to get these stores back on their feet. They're all women-owned stores, is what we discovered at the time. Companies like Unilever, Smart, and Coca-Cola put together a basket of goods after the COVID-19 pandemic, to which we gave to about 400 sari stores in Metro Manila area, all women-owned. They, like the rest of us, they didn't want to reopen because they were scared. But the basket of goods and the protective clothing and the plastic that Coke provided helped convince them to reopen their stores. We also provided, after Typhoon Odette, um, um, boats to the fishermen, but we also taught them how to fix their boats, and we replaced their wooden boats with fiberglass boats. I just returned from Siargao. We're still doing recovery for Odette. We inaugurated childcare centers in the island of Siargao, so we're continuing to do the recovery efforts, even though it's been a number of years since that typhoon happened. Just shows you what we do for our networks. If you, the Israelis always say, well, I don't know why you have a drought. You have so much water. You get more water in one typhoon than we get in one year. But if you'll notice, we were suffering from a drought not too long ago, maybe a month and a half. And to this day, the NWSS continues to say that we need more typhoons to fill up the water reservoir, Angat. So we really need another dam for Metro Manila. They've been talking about this since the 1970s, and so it would help us if we put in another dam, and if we had more rain catchment areas, or individual household could have these things where have the save the water, because we either have too little water at a certain time of the year, or as you can see, too much water. And we just need a way to capture that water so that we can make use of it later. BGC, an area, if you notice it, it never floods. Um, uh, my company was initially involved in the building of it. They put in a water catchment area there. So to make sure that no matter how much rain comes in, the water, and that's normally a park, but when floods come in, they turn it into a rain catchment area, and that's where they capture the excess water. That's why and much of the infrastructure there is also underground. If you notice, there's no electric lights or cable things hanging on the outside there. Now, I hate to tell you this, but more water is expected later this year. We're getting through. We're done with El Nino. According to our people in Clark, we'll be facing the La Nina phenomenon. I thought this was it, actually, when I came in here this morning, but they're telling me it hasn't even started. So they're expecting more frequent storms, stronger storms later this year and into early next year, more flooding events. And so we really have to get ready for that. This just shows our climate resilience efforts. We worked very hard on the Marikina watershed area, especially after Ondoy. We put in nurseries because we had to convince the people who live there to stop cutting down the trees to use them for what we call uling, or ash, no? Because it's easier for them to make a living. And so we started nurseries, and we tried to employ the people there to tend these nurseries and to help guard the forest area, so that they would stop chopping the trees down. But the other pressure is that there's a lot of housing. The mayors there are all they tell us they're all pro-environment, but there's heavy pressure from developers to put houses. There are actually several prominent people with houses in that Marikina watershed area, and that pressure of our growing population in the Manila area continues to increase the pressure on that watershed area, which has been really vital for us to both capture the water and make sure that Manila has water going forward. Mangrove planting is important. Tacloban, had it had mangroves around it, fewer people would have died after Haiyan and the storm surges there. That's true of many of our coastal cities as well. We have a 5-year program with USAID to provide 6 cities in the country. First of all, both with training, but also, second of all, with what we call these GIS workstations, so they can track flooding in their areas. And the next phase is that we're providing them with equipment very similar to what we have in Clark, so they can track storms as they approach their areas. So each of these LGUs should be much better prepared for future flooding and typhoons if when they come, not if. We have another program. Again, this is USAID and the Department of Energy. When the DOE saw our center in Clark, they said, we want that for ourselves. They recently inaugurated it in their headquarters. In addition, so they can track which areas no longer have power. But they also had 4 microgrids that they can deploy anywhere in the country where there's a loss of power. The Australian government, I just came back from the city of Butuan. They're funding a program to have 3 LGUs, Virac Catanduanes, Borongan Samar, and Butuan in Surigao. But the idea is that we're providing them with emergency telecoms equipment, Wi-Fi through Elon Musk's system, and then we're also providing radios, sat phones, and all this whole package for them, so they can be ready for the future emergencies. We had the 3-year program working with closely both again with USAID and with the Quezon City government. Over 3 million people were trained, and here the knowledge came from the ground up. No, it's the people themselves who taught us what was wrong, because they knew where the escape routes were. They knew where the fire hazards were. We found out some of the fire hazards were coming from our own companies, because we had these drooping electrical wires which can cause fires. And what happened is that the communities built these 3D maps, which we left there in the barangay halls, and they themselves color coded where the food was, where the water was, where the escape routes were. And that program ended a little while ago. One of our most popular programs is training small businesses to prepare for tragedies or flooding events or disasters. And with the help of ADPC, it's an NGO out of Bangkok, we've trained something like 12,000 small businesses around the country. We send a team all over to help these small businesses prepare for events like flooding and to recover. We work closely with the Office of Civil Defense to train public sector agencies so that they can continue to operate during a disaster. These are some of our tools. They're all free and downloadable. I urge you to go to ccap.com.ph. We also have another platform called iadapt.com.ph. It includes everything from comic books, for those of you that rather look at the pictures than read, to reference material in terms of how to prepare for disasters, and in the case of small businesses, how to apply for loans and so on, and how to recover from these crises. We also have a national emergency plan for the Department of Energy that we developed. This is the last of our programs we're going to talk about today. This is for the province of Laguna, again funded by USAID, but the idea is to link key utilities and key industries in that area, including eco zones, so that they can all prepare together with schools and the local governments, and work as one to prepare Laguna for a future emergency or crisis. It's called an area-wide business continuity plan. It's ongoing as I speak, but the idea is no company is alone when it responds to a flood or a volcanic eruption. We need to work together with not just the private sector, but with other groups as well, local governments and NGOs. I'll end with this slide. One of the things we learned from the pandemic, and I've said this several times, is that we're all connected. And what happens in a city in China that nobody ever heard of will affect the lives and deaths of people in New York, Italy, Manila, or Butuan. And because we're all connected, we need to work together. And if we looked, I was listening to the message from DNR Undersecretary that by 2100, a lot of the area will be underwater. If we want a better world for our children and for their children, we need to work together, and we need to start today.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Butch Mailey, for that presentation. We would also like to recognize the PDRF and all their efforts in leading and promoting stronger disaster resilience measures. Indeed, the role of the private sector, thus, it is really critical in disaster resilience by investing in infrastructure, implementing risk management strategies, and collaborating with public agencies to ensure business continuity and community recovery. So once again, we'll be having a panel discussion later on with our resource speakers. So we will be taking questions from the floor. And for those who are watching us online, please drop your questions at the Q&A box. And our next panelist is Mr. Ludwig Federigan, founder and chief strategic officer of the Young Environmental Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Mr. Ludwig Federigan.
Thank you, Joey, for that introduction. Good morning to everyone. My presentation is very brief, and I made sure that everything I wrote it down, so that I will not miss a point. We survive April and May of this year, which are usually the hottest months in the Philippines and other Southeast Asian countries. The suffocating high temperatures worsened by El Nino event brought hotter and drier conditions with heat index locally reaching 42 degrees Celsius. Hundreds of schools were closed, disrupting the classes of millions of young Filipinos. According to the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, both April and May of this year were recorded as the warmest in its 175-year global record. Sorry. In the past 15 years, 10 of the coastless typhoons in the Philippines have occurred. These include Yolanda in 2013, Odette in 2021, Pablo in 2012, Glenda in 2014, Ompong in 2018, Pepeng in 2009, Ulysses in 2020, Rolly in 2020, Paeng in 2022, and Pedring in 2011. The total amount of damage to homes, infrastructure, and agriculture resulting from these typhoons has reached 363.7 billion pesos. Intense heat and typhoons are extreme weather events. According to the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report 2024, extreme weather events are the second most severe global risk over a 2-year period from 2024 to 2005. Over a 10-year period, extreme weather events are the most severe global risk. Towards the end of May of this year, Pag-asa stated that there is a high chance of La Nina conditions developing in July, August, September period, which will increase the likelihood of above normal rainfall in the areas of the country, especially towards the end of the year. With an average of 20 typhoons in a year entering the Philippine area of responsibility, we have recently experienced the third typhoon. According to the data of the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council as of 8 a.m. July 26, Saturday, Typhoon Karina left with 21 deaths and caused a total damage of over 20 million pesos to houses, public infrastructure, and agriculture. It affected 1.3 million persons, displacing 887,000 individuals across 261 cities and municipalities. Approximately 689 areas were flooded. A professor at the University of the Philippines, Institute of Environmental Science and Meteorology, said that Typhoon Ondoy's rain rate, or the amount of rainfall in a given amount of time, is more intense than Typhoon Karina. Typhoon Ondoy dumped 350 millimeters in just 6 hours, while Typhoon Karina took 18 hours to reach the same amount. Metro Manila, the capital region of the country, has experienced numerous devastating typhoons resulting floods over the years. The three worst typhoon-induced flooding events in Metro Manila based on severity, impact, and recorded damages include Typhoon Nondoy in 2009, which caused unprecedented flooding in Metro Manila with 455 millimeter of rainfall recorded within 24 hours, surpassing the previous highest rainfall record. It affected over 4.9 million people, resulted in 464 fatalities, and cost 11 billion pesos in damages. The extensive flooding and high number of casualties marked this typhoon as one of the most catastrophic natural events in the Philippines. Typhoon Ulysses that happened in 2020 brought heavy rainfall and strong winds, causing widespread flooding in Metro Manila and other parts of Luzon. It affected over 3 million people, resulting in 101 casualties, extensive property damage, and displacement. Ulysses compounded the hardships faced by Filipinos at its struck shortly after Typhoon Rolly. In 2014, Typhoon Glenda brought intense winds and heavy rains, resulting in severe flooding in several areas of Metro Manila. It caused significant infrastructure damage affecting 4.2 million people and resulting to 106 fatalities. Glenda's impact was felt across Luzon, causing widespread power outages and transportation disruptions. The link between climate change and urban flooding is a complex issue facing many cities worldwide. Climate change exacerbates urban flooding through various interconnected factors, one of which is increased precipitation and extreme weather events. Climate change alters weather patterns, leading to more frequent and intense rainfall events. Warmer air can hold more moisture, resulting in heavier downpours during typhoons. The increased frequency of extreme weather events like hurricanes, typhoons, and monsoon contributes significantly to urban flooding. Second is sea level rise. Global warming causes melting polar ice caps and thermal expansion of seawater, leading to rising sea levels. Coastal cities face a higher risk of flooding from storm surges and high tides, which are amplified by higher baseline sea levels. Third is urbanization and land use changes. Urban areas with concentration of impermeable surfaces, such as roads, pavements, and buildings, hinder water absorption into the ground. This results in increased runoff during heavy rainfall. Often, rapid urbanization outpaces the development of adequate drainage systems, leading to urban flooding. Increased temperature and heat waves. Cities tend to be hotter and drier due to known human activities and infrastructure. These can worsen impacts of heat waves, affecting precipitation patterns and increasing the likelihood of intense rainfall events that cause flooding. Last but not the least is socioeconomic vulnerability. Low-income communities residing in flood-prone areas with inadequate infrastructure are disproportionately affected by urban flooding. Climate change further intensifies these vulnerabilities by increasing the frequency and severity of flooding events. By understanding and addressing these factors, cities can better prepare for and mitigate the impacts of urban flooding caused by climate change. urban flooding results in significant economic losses, including property damage, infrastructure damage, and disruption of economic activities. With increasing occurrence of flooding due to climate change, the burden on urban areas intensifies. In February of this year, Swiss RE Institute reported that countries most vulnerable to rising losses in the future are those where hazard intensification intersects with high levels of economic exposure. And this situation applies very well to the Philippines, as its annual economic losses from weather events as a percentage of our gross domestic product are much higher than any other country in the world, around 8 times more than the United States, which has the second highest losses. But do remember that not all flooding can be solely attributed to climate change. Typhoons are natural weather phenomenon influenced by various factors, including natural variation in oceanic and atmospheric conditions over time. Some instances of flooding can be attributed to these natural variabilities rather than climate change alone. However, urbanization, deforestation, inadequate infrastructure, and poor waste management can worsen flooding irrespective of climate change. Poor drainage systems and changes in land use can contribute to increased runoff and flooding during typhoons. Historical records indicate that typhoons and associated flooding have been happening for centuries, even prior to the current period of accelerated climate change. This suggests that such events can occur independently of climate change. So how do we tackle urban flooding? First is improving our infrastructure is crucial, which means enhancing urban drainage systems, constructing flood barriers, and retrofitting buildings to withstand flooding can help mitigate the impact of urban flooding. Nature-based solutions are also essential. Implementing green infrastructure, such as green roofs, permeable pavements, and urban wetlands aids in managing stormwater and reducing runoff. Last is policy and planning play a significant role. Integrating climate resilience into urban planning, zoning laws, and building codes ensures that new developments are designed to withstand future climate impacts. A strict implementation of our solid waste management law is also imperative. While the connection between climate change and urban flooding is clear and multifaceted, and as the climate continues to change, urban areas must adapt by improving infrastructure, implementing nature-based solutions, and enhancing policy frameworks to mitigate the risks and impacts of flooding. Addressing these challenges requires a coordinated effort from governments, communities, and stakeholders to build resilient cities capable of enduring the growing threat of urban flooding. Let us go back to some ASEAN and Filipino perspective on climate change. The State of the Southeast Asian Report 2024 reveals that the region continues to face unprecedented challenges in the rapidly changing global geopolitical and economic environment, as well as the evolving dynamics between major powers. More than half of ASEAN nationals rank climate change as the second most pressing concern. And according to the same report, 6 out of 10 Filipinos consider climate change and extreme weather events as the second biggest challenge. The People's Climate Vote 2024 states that 76% of Filipinos are worried to more worried about climate change, with almost half thinking about it every day. The impacts of climate change in the future will remain dependent on the extent of warming that occurs. Current data shows that global temperatures continue to rise, with 2023 being the warmest year on record. El Nino has also played a role in this trend. 8 out of 10 Filipinos believe that this country is addressing climate change. And I agree with Yusek Te. But from an economic standpoint, taking no action on climate change is no longer an option. In closing, extreme weather events like intense heat and urban flooding present significant challenges. While resilience is crucial, accountability is equally important for effective disaster management. Accountability makes government agencies and organizations transparent about their actions and decisions. And this transparency helps to build trust among affected communities and stakeholders. Holding authorities accountable increase public confidence in disaster response efforts and responsible institutions. Accountability ensures that resources allocated for disaster response and recovery are used effectively and efficiently. It helps prevent misuse and mismanagement of funds and resources intended for relief operations. Regularly monitoring and evaluation of disaster response action ensures appropriate use of resources and prompt addressing of any gaps and efficiencies. Accountability ensures that the needs of the most vulnerable population are addressed and that they receive the support and assistance that they need. It helps prevent neglect and an unequal distribution of aid and resources, upholding the rights of affected individuals and communities. Through accountability, affected individuals and communities have avenues to seek redress and justice if they are neglected or wronged during disaster response efforts, further improving clarity and flow. Accountability promotes sustainable recovery efforts by ensuring that actions taken are not just quick fixes, but are aimed at long-term resilience and sustainability. It encourages investment in infrastructure, policies, and practices that reduce future vulnerabilities. Engaging communities in accountability processes ensures that recovery efforts are community-driven and reflect the actual needs and priorities of those affected, contributing to clarity and flow. An example that highlights the importance of accountability is Typhoon Yolanda in 2013, where response exposed gaps in preparedness and accountability. In the aftermath, increased efforts were made to improve disaster management systems, including better accountability mechanisms. These mechanisms were implemented to ensure that resources reach those in need and that future responses will be more efficient and effective. While resilience is about the capacity to withstand and recover from extreme weather events, accountability ensures that the actions taken to achieve resilience are transparent, just, and effective. Both resilience and accountability are crucial in protecting our communities, efficiently using resources, learning from past experiences, and ensuring sustainable and equitable recovery. Maraming salamat po for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Federigan, for highlighting the critical role of resilience and accountability in protecting our communities. At this point, we will now proceed to the panel discussion. I would like to call back on stage Mr. Butch Mayley, Mr. Ludwig Federigan, Dr. Kiko Magno, and representing USECTE, Director Elenida Basug, the Director of Climate Change Service and concurrent Director of the Gender and Development Office at the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And to moderate this panel discussion, please welcome Mr. Orlando Oxales, convener of PIBEST.
Sa kanila. Pagmarangan. Good morning, everybody. Morning. Sobra yata. Butch. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great discussion. Thank you very much for all of your talks this morning. And it really sets the tone of our discussions. Hi, Butch. Yeah. Yeah. Um, on behalf of PBEST, welcome to our panel discussion. And the first question that came to mind after listening to all those talks is, yes, it's really very complex, no? And really we can all feel it, and we're actually experiencing all of these issues and challenges right now. And probably to start off the discussion, um, we come from four very different point of views, from the government, the academe, civil society, and from the private sector. And what would be interesting would be actually you discuss several issues and several solutions and even good practices that we're doing right now. And I do believe and I do agree that there have been some gains already that we've already done, not just through government but actually collectively, as what Butch has pointed out, especially after the experience of Bondoy. For me, that was a very pivotal um, disaster that actually changed, it actually opened up a lot of eyes, but still, it actually also opened up a lot of challenges and complexities in several dynamics. No? From your point of view, because in these sessions, what we really want to for everyone to take home is, from when we get together with all of these experts, is if we are going to tell our government or the leadership on three, or not, you don't have to limit it to three priorities that we need to act on. It may be on policy, it may be on any other dynamic that you feel, from what we have experienced since Ondoy up to the present, up to just a couple of days ago, and even today, that we need to act on a short-term, medium, and a long-term basis. Um, let's hear first from our uh, guest from the Department of DNR, no, Director Vasu.
Yeah, thank
Hi.
you. First of all, thank you for this opportunity of invitation from PBES to be able to share our ideas this more portion. And speaking in behalf of USEC Anate, I think one of the things that we think are is very important after having heard of these things and after experiencing this ourselves is the need to keep pushing for multi-stakeholder engagements. I think we have seen it from what has been the actual start of PDRF that uh, more and more now we see heightened multi-stakeholder engagement. I think we have no other choice but to do that. It scales up the things that we do, it accelerates, and it should be able to uh, even shorten what would be a very long process for us to be able to manage a very serious problem that we have. I think keeping pushing for multi-stakeholder engagement, and as we are guided now by a national adaptation plan and an NDC implementation plan that has to likewise be cascaded at sub-national levels. I think these are the things that we need to be able to keep pushing and keep accelerating action on. Perhaps that for now, sir.
Yeah, thank you for that. And connecting that with Professor Kiko's talk. Professor Kiko, you talked about the need for verticality. And this morning, while we were having a little discussion, we were observing some gaps or disconnects or misalignments, really, from what some local governments are doing and how different their levels of implementations or even their mindsets are regarding this. And sometimes it creates some gaps of what we as our national government is planning. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would like to take off from what Director Basug mentioned about the need for multi-stakeholder engagement at the subnational level. So we all know that there is data out there. There is we already have hazard mapping through Project NOAA, Department of Science and Technology. And so there's a lot of data out there. But the important challenge is how to use this data and how to develop action plans. Precisely, these are the things that local government units should do. Develop action plans using data. But they would need a lot of support, technical support, support in data analytics. Even big data now is very useful, data from social media, because you're able to crowdsource sentiments and how people are actually moving. So I use the theory of collective action. So I think the key challenge is uh, the enabling conditions should be there for climate action. And I would just mention that governance and the use of data would be very crucial in climate adaptation and disaster resilience.
Thank you, Kiko. And Ludwig?
The first question, the one that you asked.
Or
Director Vaz.
if you have any three priorities that you would recommend, for example, to the president on a short-term, medium-term, or a long-term basis.
One, I'm first is I'm very happy that our national government have already released the version of our National Adaptation Plan and an NDC implementation plan. No? While I'm happy with that, of course, the work continues because those plans have to be funded, no, by the national government, so that it becomes operationalized, so that we achieve our pathway towards climate resilience. No? Second is I remain to be sad because in this country, while we have environmental education law, no, but take note, even if you read that particular law, you will not find the word climate in that law. No? And that responsibility actually belongs to DepEd because it is embodied in RA 9729. No? And the law on climate education that is embodied in Climate Change Act of 2009. Unfortunately, when you had your senior high school, perhaps, or even junior high school, you never, I mean, the students out here, you never had a specific subject on climate change. Perhaps you would have a specific lecture on climate change under the STEM program, but for me, it's not sufficient. And even when the former secretary launched the Matatag curriculum, and I suppose that climate should have been a part of that curriculum, because when you talk of matatag, and that should bring the effort to increase our climate resiliency. Unfortunately, still climate was left out of that particular matatag curriculum. No? And third is when I was working with government, I used to work with Climate Change Commission. Third is I wanted to see a more stronger voice coming from the business sector. I felt that when I was with the government, every time we would have a multi-stakeholder consultation, well, private sector is there, but very limited in terms of the representation. I will no longer question the presence of civil society and non-government organization because this sector is the most noisiest among all the groups during multi-stakeholder consultation. But I wanted to hear more coming from the private sector, given that if we operationalize, for example, our 75% commitment, I don't know what is the target of the private sector in terms of their individual operations, in terms of their emission reduction targets. No? I've seen some, especially those private companies that I was part of reviewing some of their reports, but those that are big, especially non-publicly listed, no, very limited. No? Because you have to remember that only publicly listed companies are mandated by SEC to submit sustainability reports. And in these sustainability reports, private sector would provide their environmental footprint on the operations that they do. No, but there are very few publicly listed companies compared to the spectrum of all private corporations. No? So we have to expand that coverage of SEC so that most of that organizations will be covered in submitting their environmental governance.
Yeah, thank you, Angat. And good thing you were already talking about the private sector. And I myself, I had a very great experience actually with the PDR, the first time I worked with PDRF during Project Ugnayan during the pandemic. And I really saw firsthand how quick and how fast in a huge existential crisis, the private sector can really move mountains. And it was very critical then because the problem is we went on a quick lockdown everywhere. And the first problem is how is everybody going to be fed in those crucial first weeks? And it was actually a national security issue, which I was so happy I was part of and was very effective. And I saw how what Butch said was all competitors, no matter what business or no matter where they just came in and acted together with the church, NGOs, and even the Philippine National Police. And with that, I'd like to ask, from your point of view, Butch, you've seen it since the Ondoy's days, how we've been, the private sector is trying to, has been actually actively being participant to every disasters. And what would you see from your point of view would be more recommendations, or what are more solutions that we see to further strengthen this collaboration? And to what Ludwig said, to expand the involvement of non-listed companies, which is the bulk of our ecosystem.
Okay, that's several questions, but just remind me the ones that I forgot. No? But I do want to say something about Ugnayan, the COVID-19 pandemic. If for those of you who may not remember those days, it's early 2020, and the private sector raised something like $32 million. This is grocery gift certificates, which are given to 14 million people all around the Metro Manila area. It was really crucial in March and April of 2020. At the time, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of places had closed their businesses, and many people are going to go hungry without that effort. But we worked with the Caritas and the church, and actually the priests and their parishioners went house to house because we didn't want social gatherings, and they gave away these 14 million grocery gift certificates to these people, and it's quite an effort. I don't think anybody else in the world did that, but yeah. I hope we don't have to go through that again. but no, my recommendations would be, I think, first of all, we've had these discussions before in 2010. We were exactly talking about the same problem. I think infrastructure is really important. Long-term solutions are what we need to look at, because we can't be doing this every 5 years or 10 years. People who are younger than us will be in our place and will be having the same discussion, after we've implemented these solutions. But I think we have to look at long-term solutions, and I think infrastructure is really important for Metro Manila, because Manila is a low-lying area, and we've got rising seawater, more dense population, so we face fundamental issues, and so we need really some important infrastructure projects to protect the population. The other thing is it's got to be a Metro Manila-wide effort. Makati cannot do it by itself. Quezon City cannot do it by itself. It's really the whole entity of Metro Manila that needs to be put together and work together for a lasting solution. And I do think that you should rely on the private sector. I see a colleague of mine from Idea Space Foundation here. I think that startups are really important. You may not realize this, but there are many startups now focused on solutions to the climate crisis and to recycling and so on, and trying to make a business out of this. But and these are young people who are starting their own companies, and it's an area that we tend to overlook when we look at these solutions. But now, what was that about the unlisted companies? I didn't.
Yeah, Ludwig pointed
Yeah,
out
yeah,
that,
okay.
yeah, we've
yeah.
seen all
They
the
don't all
listed
report,
big,
yeah,
big
okay.
business groups participating in PDRF, and probably what would be your ideas of further expanding this?
Well, like as Ludwig said, many of the bigger companies are almost forced to come up with sustainability reports. No, so it's really changed. Many of them have chief sustainability officers, quite high ranking, and so they're very aware of it. They report it in their annual reports. Now, for the unlisted companies and for the medium-sized and smaller businesses, I think it's really got to be just more pressure on them in terms of when they see the bigger guys doing it. Maybe there's the big corporations can ask their suppliers and their tenants of their malls or to also be part of this effort, and I think that's the way that they can influence it, because in some way or the other, whether it's the sari stores or the people in the with stores in the malls, or whether it's the small businesses, in some way or other, they rely on the bigger companies very often for contracts, and that way they can exert pressure on them to promote sustainability and to be part of that effort.
Yeah, thank you, Butch. There's a lot of mention of the need for infrastructure and so many interventions. And one reality with all of these, it's all going to need funding and a lot of investment. Now, recently we were awarded as the host of the Loss and Fund. Yeah. Would you care to please elaborate on that? On how how will that be significant and relevant to us here in the Philippines?
Yeah. As you know, just last July 9, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Interim Secretariat has announced that of 8 contending countries, Philippines' bid to host the Loss and Damage Fund Board has been selected. Of course, that is not yet for certain because we still have to comply with the requirement. And at the President's State of the Nation address last July 22, he had mentioned that the country had secured a seat in the Loss and Damage Fund Board in the person of Attorney Mark Hoven, former Undersecretary of Finance, for being a permanent secretariat member for 2024 and 2026 and an alternate to the Asia Pacific Group for 2025. Being part of the Loss and Damage Fund Board and being able to host it will give us the opportunity for the country to be a voice for the vulnerable countries, to also express our ability to be able to keep pushing for what had been a win, a long time one, pushing for developed countries to to set aside fund for responding to the loss and damage being felt by primarily vulnerable countries due to climate change. And as we are able to do this, then we are able to express our long-standing advocacy for climate justice and the ability to be able to contribute to developing the operation, the policy, and the need to fast-track mobilization of what could be fair and accessible access to loss and damage fund. For now, we have been working because there is a requirement to confer legal personality and legal capacity to the board of the loss and damage fund. The president has announced that it will require the help of Congress, and therefore, in fact, last Friday we just met up with the chairperson of the Congress Committee on Climate Change, Congressman Edgar Chato, because his committee has already filed a bill in Congress. Likewise, Congresswoman Rachel Arenas, the chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs of the House of Representatives, has likewise filed a similar bill. alongside also with Congressman Joey Salceda. And even in the upper house, a bill has already been filed by Senator Lauren Legarda. Likewise, a bill is being up for to be filed by Senator Amy Marcos, the chair of the uh, Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, because after a national legislation is enacted to be able to grant legal capacity and personality to the fund of the board, to the board of the fund, it will the board will enter into host country agreement with the Philippines to be able to have this arrangement with the World Bank, that is the interim secretariat, because developed countries have already been sharing their pledges and commitments to the fund. The need to be able to have this operationalized is such that it cannot as yet already obtain such commitments from development countries if these processes are not yet put in place, and therefore we're really fast tracking the matter. And we're grateful that the President has given his statement of support to this initiative of the Executive Department. Likewise, Senate President Escudero has likewise issued one. And we're glad that even PBES has issued its own statement of support in this direction. We hope that being able to push on the processes for loss and damage fund will be able to help the vulnerable countries, developing countries, access to this much needed fund. Of course, Philippines as being one of the most vulnerable countries in the world also.
Thank you, Director. Ludwig, you'd like to add?
I just wanted to share, for those who are not familiar with the loss and damaged fund. It's a big win for Philippines, no? Because this is a 30-year struggle in the entire UNFCCC negotiations. No? The term loss and damage actually was brought up, the concept actually was brought up by Vanuatu way back in 1991. So some of you may not have been born during that time. And then after which, because the loss and damage does not exist in the UNFCCC framework, no? That particular concept. Then UNFCCC established a Warsaw International Mechanism on loss and damage, wherein one of the members of the executive board comes from the Philippines. And then after which, the loss and damage was incorporated in the Paris Agreement of the 2015. Still, with the mention of loss and damage, that particular framework wasn't operationalized until COP 26 in Egypt. It was adopted in Egypt, and it was operationalized in Dubai last year. No? So it is something that we have to look forward to. It puts the Philippines again to become another leader for the global climate movement, no? And something to look forward to what will happen, how this fund would, or this board would operationalize it in the coming months and years.
Yes, just to follow up, in your article, we read about parametric insurance. Would you tell us how illustrate to us how it's possibly going to work?
Well, parametric insurance is a strategic tool for disaster management. No? We had parametric insurance. The government had parametric insurance. But in my article, I cited there the case of Typhoon Haiyan and Typhoon, there's another typhoon, not so sure whether it was Typhoon Odette. No? Unfortunately, when these typhoons happened, no, in 2013, and the other one is in 2021, those areas that were affected by these typhoons didn't have any parametric insurance. Parametric insurance is actually pre-agreed terms with a insurance company that when certain conditions of a natural catastrophe happens, immediately the insurance company have to do payout immediately, no, without the absence of any assessment, because you have already agreed on predetermined parameters when the parametric insurance or the insurance would be released to the particular LGU. No, so for example, if it's an agricultural area, no, when you say 100% of the crop yields are devastated, then automatically the amount that was defined in the insurance have to be released, no, without the presence of an assessment. No? I just not so sure whether most of our LGUs under their LDRRM plans have incorporated parametric insurance. Now, if they did, then perhaps that would answer for any natural catastrophe, any damages for natural catastrophe. If they did not, then of course, if they have other non-life insurance, then it will also be sufficient. But of course, you have to undergo the assessment side, no, to measure the amount of damages. So it's also a non-life insurance, but it's predetermined, and payout is very immediate. So when payout is very immediate, it's very easy in terms of recovery on the recovery space. I mean recovery piece. No, that's all.
Yes, Bush, you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think the Philippines purchased a $200 million catastrophe bond, no? If I'm right. So we have that in place. I'm just not sure what the triggers are for it, but that was a big deal that we've actually purchased that catastrophe bond. So if anything bad happens, the Philippines above a certain level, we get that money right away. So I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it's there.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Dr. Basu, Director Basu, would you like to add some more on the fund? It's good. Yeah, yeah. That's interesting, and really, it's very interesting that there's that kind of mechanism, and as I understand, there's something happening already right now being implemented here with agriculture, or is there any other operational examples that this is being practiced? Would yeah.
Well, in those two typhoons, Typhoon Odette, Typhoon Yolanda, there were no parametric insurance. In fact, in one of the presentation during the NatCat Summit that was held here in Makati 2 weeks ago, that particular speaker, I just can't remember his name, made that comparison between these two typhoons. No? And for example, for Typhoon Yolanda, for them to release 100% payout for all the damages during Typhoon Yolanda, it took 10 years for insurance companies to release it. He showed the progression in terms of percentage of the release. In terms of Typhoon Odette, I think it's already this year is the third year, and they have not even released half of what is the amount of damage for Typhoon Odette. No, so trying to compare, for example, for both, no, if we just rely on our regular land life insurance, for LGUs just rely on regular non-life insurance, it would take some time before you're able to recover the actual damage that you experience, compared when you secure, for example, a parametric insurance. In terms of cost, how much a parametric insurance costs, I haven't explored that area, but perhaps it may be on a high side, no, because it is anticipatory in terms of action. So, but it's something that our LGUs and even our national government agencies should look into continuously.
Yes, thank you. Prof. Kigo, one of your slides that really struck me was how much funds, according to COA, have been underutilized or not actually utilized in terms of disaster risk reduction or even climate action. So it's interesting. What do you think would be the problems? Why LGUs are not using it, even the national government?
Yeah, because when we passed the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act in 2010, it provides there that there is a large portion that should be invested in disaster preparedness. So even local government units, they need to allocate 70% for disaster preparedness and 30% for disaster response. Because our previous law really focus on response, where people are being rescued, people are in the rooftops. That's the usual thing, right? But with disaster preparedness programs, you're actually preventing people from being in really dangerous situations. So that's the idea behind having evacuation centers. So you actually utilize your funds for those purposes. The other thing, Orly, is that technology, I think, is a great enabler in disaster resilience, like the use of artificial intelligence. I started to mention use of data. And for climate adaptation and disaster risk reduction plans, we need to use data analytics and to use technology, information technology. We use command systems, what Butch presented a while ago. The thing is that this should be done all over the country. So I think the efforts of the group of Butch, they can be used by LGUs, but it's really a matter of being integrated in this process. So, Orly, you asked a while ago, how do you do vertical integration? So it's really LGUs, and there are really very good LGUs that are able to really integrate with the national government agencies, no? Perhaps at the regional level, down to that level. But I think that the challenge is really also linking up the different stakeholders. Director Basug mentioned multi-stakeholder engagement. So what's needed is to establish knowledge centers where LGUs can work together, and then there is the private sector. You have the policy think tanks. So I would like to end my comment by saying that what we need are local think tanks, supported, of course, by national think tanks, like what PBES is doing, what StratBase is doing. But having a really strategic effort, bringing it down to the subnational level. So it's all about support systems. It's doing policy networks.
In terms of knowledge centers, and in terms of knowledge centers, I think this is where academe, higher education institution, primarily our state universities and colleges, even private universities, really have to play a very great role in terms of the data analytics. There's the Philippine Association of Climate and Disaster Resilience, and other initiatives of some other universities and colleges that I think have to be highlighted and scaled up, in fact, to be able to downscale and granularize even more this needs for training, capacity building needs, and the need to train on the early warning systems, and the need to, make sense with a number of the big data analytics that are already present and that are there.
Thank you, Director Basuk. I've been told that I only have a few more minutes, so I'll open a few more minutes for a few questions from our audience, from our participants here in the audience. Is there anyone here who would like to throw a question to our panel? Yes?
Hello po, good afternoon. I am Clarice Christine Nona de Guzman from Universidad de Manila Political Science Department. And I actually have two questions in regards with the discussion earlier. And my first question is that there's no doubt that there are initiatives, programs, and grassroots level initiatives that are being pursued by different, governing bodies, NGOs, and different youth-led activities. But my question is, in terms of how the people react in these programs, can we say that these initiatives that we do are effective? And the second question that I have is, basically, you have mentioned that, there is a need for the people to participate actively in terms of how we address, mitigate climate change, and how do we bring these initiatives, these ideas that we have in university level so that the youth, specifically the students, can actively engage more in terms of how we respond to this, global risk that we are facing?
I'll just answer the first part of that question. Maybe somebody else can answer the part about universities. But I think they are effective. If you look at what happened during Ondoy in 2009, and all the improvements that were made. I mean, we got some flooding last Wednesday, I think, but it was nothing like what we suffered before. No, so w- the other problems that there's more people in Manila, and that we've got this climate change. So there's more water events, there's more rain, but the in general we're much better than we used to be. No, all of these programs didn't exist 10 years ago, and so things are improving, and I think we should be optimistic about it.
The second dimension of how do we bring this to the youth, no? I think I used to lead the Environmental Education and Information Division of the Environmental Management Bureau of the DNR. It still is an existing division within the DNR, and that seeks to highlight environmental education among universities and colleges. It likewise initiated the development of a Philippine Association of Tertiary Level Education Institutions in Environmental Protection and Management. It's been doing a number of network with state universities and colleges and even private groups. And there's a youth desk also that the DNR maintains. It's in all regions. And the Environmental Education Information Division likewise has an Environmental Education Information section unit in the different regions. And therefore, these are avenues whereby we get to link up the universities with the youth groups there to be able to do these things. We also maintain mga kwentong klimalikasan tungo sa katatagan, a recognition program that likewise also looks into the school-based initiatives. And therefore, I think these are among the few initiatives to really upscale youth involvement in a very serious matter such as climate.
Okay, yeah, yes. Ludwig.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, Clarice, no, in addition to what Director Helen said, no, during the time of pandemic, while I was with the Climate Change Commission, our group initiated what we call the Klima Film Festival, so that young people would be able to use their lens, how they would tell a climate story. No? So during our first run, that was 2020-2021, we actually received over 20 submissions now all over the country, covering 17 regions. No? So I would suppose that Filipinos are really aware about climate change, or they have nothing to do during that time because it was pandemic. No? So which is which. No? So we have a lot of good films, no, although those are very short, that lasted only for 5 to 7 minutes, no, but there are a lot of stories that were told that are impacts of climate change on the local level. The second year we had it run, 2021 to 2022. We have a limited number of entries, no, and unfortunately, due to budget concern of the agency, that particular program was actually scrapped. But it was taken over by our non-government partner, Oscar M. Lopez Center, which is now running the program, the same type of program. They call it mga kwento ng klima. No? But it's not only, just to tell you, this is not only a mere submission of film. No, na there's a competition, I submit. No, the program doesn't run like that. No, it's actually a journey. Now, during the particular journey, the selected teams who participate in the program will be given cut bill, no, in terms of trying to understand the science of climate change, why drought is happening and why it is linked with climate change, why flood is happening and why it is linked with climate change. No, so bibigyan talaga ng sessions, and this. And the teacher or the lecturers are actually climate scientists in the country. No? And before you do your film, there would also be what we call a climate film lab, where you will be able to meet, for example, top scriptwriters and our known directors, no, to teach you what is the best way to shoot your film, what are the do's and the don'ts. No? Although this happened during my time when it was in pandemic, I think in Oscar M. Lopez Center, it is happening in person, and I think the prizes are more bigger than during our time.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to enjoin our audience to give our panelists a big round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all of those very interesting and very productive insights. And I believe we have a little photo opportunity with our panelists. Yeah. Ayan, dito po. Yeah, yeah. Oh, one more. Thank you so much. Another round of applause, please, for our esteemed guests.
All right, and to give our closing remarks, let us all give a round of applause to Mr. Orlando Oxales, the convener of PBEST.
Thank you so much. I know everybody. This has been a very, very interesting morning. Very relevant to us nowadays, especially that we're fresh out of a very damaging typhoon, and we're to this day we're experiencing our climate challenges. As we close, I'd like to extend on behalf of PBEST and our lead convener, Professor Victor Andres Dindo Manhit, our profound thanks to our esteemed group of panelists. Let's give a round of applause to Dr. Kiko Magno. Also for the very informative speech of Undersecretary Annalisa Te. And of course, representing DNR in person, Director Elenida Basug. Thank you so much. And of course, the President of PDRF, representing the private sector, Mr. Rene Butch Maley. Of course, the presentation of Dr. Kiko Magno. Thank you so much for spending that, giving to us all of those insights and findings of that study. Very important, Dr. Kiko Magno. And of course, the founder and chief strategic advisor of Young Environmental Forum from our civil society, Mr. Ludwig Federigan. As we conclude our discussion today, let's reflect on the critical role of the Philippines plays in the global fight against climate change. Our nation, nestled at the heart of the Indo-Pacific, stands at the crossroads of challenge and opportunity. We are uniquely positioned to lead by example in our response to the climate crisis, especially with our successful bid to host the Loss and Damage Fund. As a nation, we stand to serve not only the Filipino people, but extend such crucial aid to our fellow climate vulnerable neighbors as well. The Philippines' vulnerability to natural disasters and climate impacts is not just a national concern, but a call to action resonating across borders, connecting us with like-minded partners in the fight against climate change. We, the Philippine Business for Environmental Stewardship, stand as your partner. The Philippines' partner, the international community's partner in advocating developmental policies and strategies on better climate resilience. Our strong commitment to fostering synergy between economic growth and environmental responsibility is not just an aspiration, it's a necessity. Through our focus on circular economy, responsible mining, and comprehensive climate change strategies, we are aligning our efforts with national priorities and global imperatives for greater environmental governance. The recent legislative strides amplified by President Marcos Jr.'s commitment to climate action provides us with a robust foundation to carry out our mission and advocacy for responsible environmental stewardship. Together, we have the power to transform the Philippines into a beacon of resilience and sustainability. We can be a nation that not only adapts to the challenges of climate change, but we, excuse me, but we can also be the source of innovative solutions that help the world. We must remember that for every hazard, that there are ways to mitigate the risks. We must be proactive in our efforts to protect the environment because, as DNR Secretary Loizaga said, biodiversity conservation is our first line of defense against climate and disaster risks. And so, the green movement starts with all of us. All of us must be responsible stewards of the environment. So, let us forward with renewed purpose and vigor. Our collaborative efforts across all sectors of society will be the driving force behind our success. The integrated strategies we've discussed today are not just ideas, they're the blueprints of our future. As we end our forum, let us carry with us not just heightened awareness, but a reinvigorated commitment to climate action. The future of our country, and indeed our shared planet, rests in our hearts and hands. Together, we can and will make a difference. Thank you to our speakers for the valuable insights, and of course, our guests, both in person and online, for your unwavering commitment to this crucial endeavor. The journey ahead may be challenging, but with unity and perseverance, we will create a sustainable future for generations to come. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Sir Orly, and to our speakers and guests who are here, and for those who are joining us online. Once again, this is Joey Perfecta, Secretary General of the Philippine Business for Environmental Stewardship. I hope you have a great day and stay safe and dry. Also, please help yourself to some snacks over here at the side. Thank you.